Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining us. I today have the privilege of talking to Mr. Ryan Christensen.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure as always.
It's good to see you back again, man, because it's been a while since we talked last.
It has.
Well, we've talked
in person,
but
not on YouTube.
Not on YouTube.
Not on the YouTubes, yeah.
And the last time we talked was, man, like way back in November.
Yeah, it was definitely late last year.
Yeah, maybe October, something like that.
Yeah.
And everyone really liked our talk. They really liked our interview together.
I'm glad.
And you had a lot to say. We opened some eyes.
Good.
You taught me some stuff, in particular about like the BDSM side of things and dom sub relationships, which I took away from that. And you taught me a lot about sort of hypnosis and stuff, and that's kind of your profession. For those who are not aware of what Ryan does, right? Tell everyone what you do.
So I am a performance coach and master hypnotist. Basically, my job is to figure out what is holding people back in whatever area of life is most important to them. Figure out the limiting beliefs and the patterns of behavior that they're doing to hold themselves back, that are making it so that they can't succeed the way they want to, making it a lot harder on themselves. And then essentially surgically remove those.
Surgically remove them from up here.
Exactly, in the back of your head.
Yeah,
because
like deep in the mind.
Oh yeah, well the reality is the back of your head, you're running 90% of your life on autopilot, right? You're not actually thinking your way through your day 9 times out of 10. It's just all running on autopilot. Well, if you've got bad programs back there, then that's not going to be taking you in the direction you want to go.
Yep.
And it's hard to get there through normal methods. Like normal therapy takes dozens and dozens of sessions, if not hundreds, to actually really make a difference. You have to do a lot of exploration, but I get to cheat because I use hypnosis. So I just get to bypass all that stuff, go right back in there, figure out what's actually happening, make the changes on that level. So you get to have the results you're looking for and actually make some significant progress in just a couple sessions as opposed to years of therapy.
Yep.
And I think that's a better use of time, but that's me.
No, it is. It is. If you want to sit on the couch, you're welcome to take a seat over here.
Yeah, go for it.
Welcome. We got some guests in the studio, passing through. Well, there's a lot of boys in town.
Yeah.
Figured, get a few of them on the show. But there was one really interesting thing that happened to me recently. I was at a conference, and I had this young man come up to me, and because I help guys with performance anxiety. He came up to me, very honest, very frank. I'm obviously not going to name his name or anything,
right.
But he was like, "Look, Stirling, I've got this problem where whenever I put a condom on, or go to put a condom on, I like immediately lose my erection." I'm like, "Okay, let's dive into it. What's going on here?" And he was very self-conscious, like very very self-aware, I should say, because he knew exactly why it was happening, which is pretty rare for most guys. I'm going to be honest; they sort of don't dive several layers deep and figure out why their thought patterns are the way they are. He was like, "Look, I smell the latex on the condom, and then I'm reminded of like high school biology class and the first time I dissected a frog, and it triggers this sort of disgust response, and then my boner goes away." And I immediately said to the guy, I was like, "Look, this is like." One, it's great that you know where the problem is. Right. It's several layers deep, and it's like the olfactory response is super hard to unfuck. Like, because it's one of the ones. It's one of the senses that's really hard. Like visual stimuli is pretty easy to replicate.
Sure.
Audible stimuli is very easy to replicate.
And olfactory stuff is just so powerful. I mean, that's why things like colognes are so powerful and everything else. And I mean, we're hardwired, pheromones and everything else. Like that's how we help decide like who's a good match.
Yeah. Right. But I said to him, like as soon as I heard like it was an olfactory kind of response, I said, "I have the man for you. I'm going to send you to my friend Ryan, and he's going to unfuck you."
Yes.
And he's going to play around in your head. He's going to
get rid of that association.
Get rid of that association until you can get on with life. The other bit of advice I gave to him was like, "Oh, look, try like lambskin condoms instead,
or the non-latex ones." Yeah.
Yeah, it might be a bit of a different response to it, because if that's the thing. If it's just a smell response, then there's a couple ways around it.
Exactly, and that's one thing that I think a lot of guys kind of get wrong is they think they know the reason why they're doing the thing, right?
Right.
Because they can come up with a good story that makes sense. And as soon as our rational mind has a good story that makes sense, it says, "Aha, I now have the answer, and I'm off the races, and this is how."
And is that story a lot of the time something as simple as "I'm not good enough"?
It definitely can be, but usually that's not the story they're telling themselves.
Okay.
right? It's, I went through this event or I had this trauma or these things happened to me as a child and therefore that's why I messed up. It's like, no, the events aren't the problem. It's not the things that happen, it's the stories that you tell about those events.
Your interpretation of the events.
Interpretation of those events, the value you place on it, right? That's what actually determines how you respond to it, right? So the fact that he's able to draw this association between the smell of the condom and the latex in the biology lab, and it's like, this is why I'm having that, may not actually be it. It's a great story. It makes total sense, but the actual problem could be something completely different.
Something
it could
even
be something like, you're not allowed to enjoy sex, you're not allowed to have sex, or I'm going to put you in situations where you have to do it in dangerous ways to mess with your life. Like some guys are very self-destructive that way, where they will deliberately mess up their lives by doing things in ways that are deliberately harmful because they have this self-destructive streak, right? They don't think they're good enough, and so they trash their lives.
Yep.
And I run into that a lot.
It's called, do you call that a success barrier? In certain circumstances?
I mean, you could. The way that I tend to look at it is like you want to go from point A to point B, you can't get to point B, like something's holding you back, and what that barrier is could be anything.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just limiting beliefs, it's stuff that's happened, it's bad stories you're telling stuff, it's solutions that don't work anymore, right?
Yep.
Great example of this is I had a client come to me for weight loss, right? Guy knows what to do, just not able to stick with his diet, not able to stick with his exercise routine, right? He gets started, does a couple months, and then stops, right? Well, it turns out that he was bullied a lot as a kid. And his mind basically said, okay, to keep you safe, the best way to do that is for you to hide. Stay small, hide. Nobody sees you, nobody fucks with you.
Yep.
Which makes perfect and total sense. Except if you're trying to get Jack Tan's juicy as fuck, that's definitely not hiding.
Yeah, that's standing out.
That's not hiding.
Yeah.
Right? So his mind was saying, well, that's not going to, if I do that, then I can't hide, therefore you can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? It had nothing to do with like carb cravings and stuff like that. Those were just tactics and mechanisms his mind was using to screw with him so he couldn't get Jack Tan juicy as fuck and be visible.
Yep.
Well, that also had other side effects. Like it's really hard to be an entrepreneur and market if you feel like you have to stay small and hide.
Yeah, and you don't want to put yourself out there.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So these things can be very sneaky, but the beautiful thing is once we get back into your unconscious mind and start asking the questions, start digging around, it doesn't take long to figure out what those stories are.
Yep.
And once you have those stories, then you can change them, right? You just bring new information, new wisdom, new knowledge, the way that guys who are in the space looking at your stuff are seeing the world differently than they did before they came here, right? Guys who read Rollo's book, Rich's book, Ryan Stone's book, they see the world differently now because they have a different construct. They've been given a different construct. But the problem is that the back of our mind doesn't update based on that kind of stuff. If it's different from what it already believes, it ignores it. So you can consciously know that simping is bad and still shoot yourself in the foot left, right, and sideways.
Yep.
Right? Or you can go in the complete opposite direction and just go overboard in the other direction. Right?
Probably because you're like operating on autopilot.
Because you're operating on autopilot. And it's hard to change those programs.
Like if you have to, if you're not constantly consciously adjusting and observing your behavior in the moment,
right,
you can't catch yourself.
Exactly. And oh, by the way, that's exhausting and you can't keep that up forever.
And it's exhausting and you can't do it forever.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And one of the wonderful things that I see so often is guys who are like really capable and really determined, they'll have this pattern where they can do the thing for a while. And as soon as everything is good, that's when they blow it up.
Then they resort back to their old behaviors.
They resort to their old behaviors, blow everything up, trash their relationship and everything else. That's when those destructive behaviors come out because their mind says, okay, I could spend all this energy trying to keep you from doing this thing, but you're too stubborn.
Yep.
Like that would be effort. So I'm going to let you have it. And then once you have it, then I'm going to blow it up. Because not only do I not have to spend as much energy to try and keep you from getting it, but also if I do that enough, you'll stop trying. Right? Because if you bang your head up against the wall enough times and just never get anywhere, or you keep on building and keeps getting tear down, the tendency is to say, fuck it, this is not worth it anymore. Just stop trying.
Why do you think it's so common for like the mind to do that, to be like self-destructive, to try and self-sabotage? Where do you think that even comes from?
Well, it's generally a protective thing.
It's just protection.
It is generally a protective thing. For example,
to not leave your comfort zone.
Well, a couple different things. Number one, a lot of it comes from like you're growing up and you have to be a certain way in order to be approved of by your parents, your mother, and the environment, right? So if that environment was such where you couldn't be who you were, then what you want and what you are is wrong and bad. And so your mind says, well, we have to get the love and affection, and I can't be me and want the things I want. So what does it not let you do? Go after the things you want. What does it make you do? It makes you basically try and please everyone around you.
Conform.
people pleasing, all that stuff, right?
Yep.
Or putting everybody else's needs in front of yours,
Yep.
right? So mental point of origin simply is not a thing for you.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, when you try, you feel guilty because you're supposed to be doing things differently, right?
And this is where
the
hypnosis
comes in. This
comes
is
in
where,
handy.
This is why it's so powerful, because we can actually get back there and we can figure out what those stories are and change those stories very rapidly. And as soon as that's gone, right, as soon as there's no reason to execute that program, like all that stuff stops.
Yep. And how long is it, like, if you have a guy who has, let's just take this example
Sure.
of the latex.
Yeah.
Like, how many sessions does it typically take for you to, like, reprogram that in a guy?
Not many, like 1 or 2.
1 or 2 sessions.
Yeah.
And he can totally unfuck something that's been dealing with his entire life.
I had one guy who came to me, he'd been smoking weed daily for 15 years. 15 years, daily. And this guy was an entrepreneur. He's like, this is getting in my way. It's really fucking with my ability to focus and everything else. Like, I got to get this done. It's like, cool. So one session, he hasn't smoked since. And it's been 8 months.
It's not a great business model, Ryan. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. It is slightly problematic when you fix things a little bit too quickly. But you know what? In a lot of ways, I want guys to be able to get back to their life as soon as humanly possible.
Yep.
But that's also why I started up that other program. I started up a program just this last week to do a more deep dive into somebody's life.
Yep.
Right? Because one thing that we tend to do as guys is we just focus on the biggest problem, we fix that, and then we move on.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, this big thing's fixed and I'm off to the races, and we don't take a look at the rest of our life, right?
Yep.
We don't look at how our woman life is impacting our business, or our business life is impacting our fitness.
How it's all connected.
How it's all connected, exactly.
Because it's all connected up here.
It's all connected up there. Yeah, you're still living one life. And oh, by the way, if your mind wants to mess with you and you're really good at business, it's like, okay, you can make plenty of money, but I'm going to have you, spend it all on hookers and blow. Right?
Yeah.
Or like, oh, I'm going to make you so you have to flex with all the Lambos and Rolexes and everything else, so you don't actually have any money in the bank and you have no security. Right. So it can actually like let you do things and mess with you in ways in other areas of your life, so that as a whole your life isn't good, even if certain areas are. Right?
Yep. God damn.
I know, it's a mess. It's a mess.
Let's change tact a little bit here. Let's talk about hypnosis in a sexual sense, in a sexual context, because hypnosis can be for guys who are kind of. I know there's a lot of really curious about bringing hypnosis into the bedroom, and you have experience with that.
Yes, I do.
What kinds of things are possible when you combine hypnosis with sex?
So, the beautiful thing about hypnosis is once you're in a very deep state of hypnosis, once you're in a really deep state of rapport with somebody, whatever I describe basically becomes your vivid, real experience.
Yep.
Okay? Which means that we can do things like lead somebody through a fantasy and make it vivid and real for them. Right? So if somebody wants to experience a threesome and they've never had that before, I can do that. And because I control that narrative, I can describe it in such a way that's a very positive and rewarding experience. So somebody who's never had that and is kind of hesitant about that, and I lead them through that in hypnosis, and because I control that, that experience, the way I describe it and everything else, and oh, by the way, you feel this and you're feeling this pleasure and this feels good and everything else, that becomes their reality for that time. And as long as there's nothing in the way, right, as long as they don't have any strong boundaries against it or anything like that, they're going to be able to enjoy that experience. Well, that means when they're out of hypnosis, how much more willing are they to try that?
A lot more. She would be a lot more receptive to that kind of experience in real life.
And the beautiful thing is you can do all kinds of things with manipulating sensation as well.
Yep.
Right. So one of the fun things that you can do when you've got somebody in hypnosis is say, okay, I'm going to touch you on your left arm, and I want you to feel it on your right arm. Right. So you touch them on the left, and where they feel it on the right arm. And they go, that's weird. It's like, cool. Now I'm going to touch you on your right arm, and you're going to feel it on your left. Well, if I can do that, then I can make any sensation go anywhere. Yeah. So I could, for example, wire her earlobes to her clit. Yep. And I'm just sitting there just like rubbing her ears in the restaurant, and where is she feeling it?
She's feeling it in her clit. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can do all kinds of fun things like that.
And that's something, so you're getting a girl into a trance,
yes,
and then you're installing that physical anchor,
yes,
to a certain sensation, yes, on her body, and you're sort of locking that in place.
Yes, exactly.
And then you can bring it up again later on.
Exactly. As long as they are willing to play that game. And that's the biggest thing about it is
them being willing.
It has to be a voluntary thing. It has
we're not talking about knocking a bitch unconscious and I don't know, doing things that shouldn't want to be done.
That's generally a bad idea.
It's a terrible idea.
Consenting partners all around and all that good jazz.
This is all
consenting partners.
This is all consensual stuff. Right. It's all fun. She wants
how
do you kind of bring this up with women that you see? I'm curious. Like, do you sort of say, are they coming to you and being like, can this hypnosis thing work in the bedroom? Or are you coming to them and being like, would you like to have a new experience, honey?
It's much more the second, right? Yeah. It's very much oh, you're a hypnotist. That's really cool. So what do you do? It's like, well, I talk about the therapeutic stuff I do. Talk about helping guys, talking about changing lives. And I said, oh no, by the way, there's all these other fun things you could do with it as well. Which prompts that question of like what? It's like, well,
it's the curiosity that hooks them in, isn't it? You're a devil. You just like hook them in with the curiosity.
I know. I'd apologize, but I'm really not sorry.
No, don't be. Look, you're giving them orgasms for their earlobe, but you don't have anything to apologize about.
No, not at all. But then you just kind of open that door of like, one thing I do is I train women to be fully orgasmic. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, have you ever had orgasms on command? Would you like to?
Yeah.
Have you ever had an orgasm that's lasted 10 minutes long? Would you like to?
Would you like to?
Right?
And she says no.
And she says
immediately.
No. And then you say,
she's an idiot.
Awesome. Glad to meet you. On to the next.
Yeah.
Obviously, you do not want to play this game, and that's perfectly fine. I'll go find somebody who will.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? But fundamentally, if you can start manipulating pleasure and you can start linking that to any kinds of different things, and you can ramp it up and ramp it down at basically at will, then you can make it somebody essentially fully orgasmic to where, yes, you can have them orgasming on command in like half an hour.
Yep.
There was one girl that I met online who had never had an orgasm. Had plenty of sex, 18 years old, can't even masturbate to orgasm herself. She'd get close and she just couldn't get over the edge and gets bored.
Right.
And took about 20 minutes to have her having full body screaming orgasms on command in hypnosis.
See, this is interesting because she'd never had an orgasm by herself.
Right.
And yet you were somehow able to like get her to that experience that she'd never even had before. So how did you kind of get that reference point for her in the first place?
Well, it's not like they don't know what pleasure is.
Yeah.
Right? They may not have let themselves go.
You just sort of like dial it up and allow her to let go, literally let go.
Dial it up, ramp it up, double it, triple it, 10 times, 100 times, because it's all in hypnosis and it's all in your mind, so you can do whatever you want to with it. And it's like, okay, make it 100 times stronger, and so they do, and how do you resist that?
Yep.
Right? And so she was having full body screaming orgasms on command, and of course we had to test it out afterwards just to make sure it works.
To make sure it works,
right?
Yeah.
And the young lady is very, very satisfied these days.
And now she's orgasmic.
Exactly.
Look at that, saving lives. Look at it, saving lives. Look at that.
I give and I give and I give.
Right. I had this thought the other day. I get a lot of emails from guys sort of saying, "Hey, thanks. I did this thing in your video course, and now this girl's obsessed with me, and she's coming all the time and stuff." And I'm like, I had this thought the other day. I'm the Genghis Khan of orgasms. I am like they all. There's so many of them that trace back to me. Even though I've never actively, directly interacted with any of these women, it's via me.
Exactly.
My knowledge, I'm very, very pleased to be able to
It feels
claim
amazing
that.
to be like, okay, these people's lives are better because of what we do.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we're here right now in Miami for MLD's Modern Life Dating's Hot Dude Con. That's why everyone's in town, and it's good seeing all these guys come together. And I remember saying to Mr. Paul Benjamin over here last night, like, these guys need this.
Yes, they do.
They need this sort of camaraderie. You see these guys getting together, and they're so excited to finally be together because they've all been hanging out on Zoom calls and this group coaching calls and stuff, and they're so excited to be in each other's presence. Not even just our presence, but just in each other's presence, because it's the camaraderie that they've been missing.
Exactly.
And guys need this shit, you know.
And it's a bunch of guys who are dedicated to making themselves better.
Yeah.
In every way, and they're dedicated to supporting each other in that journey.
Yeah.
And you just don't see that very often out in the world these days.
Yeah.
It's missing. And that's sad, but the beautiful thing is, even if you only have that connection over the internet, that's powerful enough to get things moving.
Yeah.
And then you get to hang out with people in person, even if it's only like once a quarter, once a month, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's incredible as well, because you get to make those individual bonds that are hard to make, online.
Right? Yeah, I think so. How many times have I? It's about 20 minutes. We'll probably go for like another 5 minutes, I think, and then we'll switch around and we'll get Paul in.
Sounds good.
Paul in here as well. But so we've talked about. Let's talk about. Okay, I want to keep talking about sort of the sex angle, because I know we have a lot of things in common when it comes to like BDSM, and whatnot.
Definitely.
What are some of your favorite tools to use in the bedroom. We're talking like floggers running crops, these kind of things. I might ask, do you dabble in this as well, Paul? Do you dabble in any of these kind of BDSM toys? I might ask you this exact same question as well then.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
we could definitely talk about that.
So I am. Yeah. So I am kind of known in the DC scene for heavy impact and knives.
Knives.
Yeah.
That's an area I've never ventured down. I know lots of girls who are into like the blood, like kind of blood play.
So that's a different
knife play.
So yeah, it doesn't have to go to the cutting blood play piece. Like that's something that I don't do much of.
Yep.
That's just like with very special people. I don't really do that often.
And there's a lot of trust that's needed there.
There's a lot of trust in that, and I'm not much of a woo-woo guy, but there is something sort of special and spiritual and mystical when you start talking about like lifeblood, right? You're cutting somebody else open, you're playing with that sort of stuff. You're in a very altered space.
Yeah.
Like that's not something you just like do casually.
You don't do it willy-nilly, no.
You don't just do that willy-nilly. But I love knives that are not sharp enough to cut, but they're pointy enough that people can feel that sensation because it allows me to be very aggressive and give them that experience and the feeling of the threat and the feeling of that touch and being manipulated with the knives. That's one of the things I love to do is take a pair of knives and then just move her around with them.
Oh,
so
I see.
Putting her in different positions.
Yes.
Just
So she's reacting to the...
She's reacting to the knives, right? So I'm manipulating her body and putting her in different places, and the only thing that I'm using are these knives.
So this is obviously all consensual, guys, for any morons who are watching. And look, no, because this is important because...
you have to have the don't eat paint warning, right? You have to.
Like don't eat paint, Jesus, yeah. Like don't pick up and like stick a knife in some random woman.
No.
Fuck's sake.
You have to know what you're doing.
No, but what we're talking about is this is like I tell guys this. It's like all this stuff is connected. Like there's a reason why women like 50 Shades of Grey. There's a reason why women like to be tied up.
Yep.
Like 70% of women, it's one of their top fantasies is bondage.
Yep.
There's a reason a lot of women like having their hair pulled. There's a reason why a lot of women like being spanked. The way I encapsulate that into one idea is that it demonstrates that you as a man have the capacity for violence, which means that you can protect her with that violence.
Yeah, and
that's ultimately what it comes down to.
And they want
these
to
are just
feel that.
They want to feel that power.
Experience that power.
They want to feel that power. But these are just different ways, different mediums for communicating that.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Like floggers are okay for me. Like paddles are okay. I'd rather spank you with my hand than with a paddle.
Right.
Rather than hit you with a flogger, I'd rather just hit you with my fist. And I
had a girl on the show. I had a girl on the show. That was her exact fetish.
Yep.
Was she literally had a whole, and she said it openly on the show. You can go back and watch the interview. Caitlin Katsaros, she's a porn star, and her fetish is like getting punched, and she orgasms from not like a straight fucking right. I'm not Mike Tyson in the bitch.
You got to do it the correct way.
But you're doing it the correct way. It's like basically love taps, but it's still that makes her orgasm.
Yep.
And this, like, guys hearing that, a lot of guys will be hearing this for the first time. And I'm not, by all means, I'm not telling you all to go out and try this, because a lot of you will definitely not be able to pull this shit off. I'm not going to lie. You'll fuck it up. You'll fuck it up and you'll fuck your life up.
Yep.
However, it's important to know that this exists in the same way that I tell a lot of guys to read Nancy Friday's My Secret Garden.
Yep.
Because that shit will blow your fucking mind. If you're a guy who's like very limited with his sexual experience, very new to exploring his sexuality or to helping a woman explore her sexuality, that will just be like kaboom, and it opens up a new world. So when we talk about this sort of stuff, it primarily is to open up your mind to what women are actually responding to, because they won't tell you this.
No, and half the time they don't know.
That too.
Right? Like you get these girls who have never played in this space and they've never experimented with that stuff, and then you just start adding in little bits of that and they just lose their mind.
Yeah.
Because it gives them this intensity, this experience that they've never had before, and it draws them into your world even more, which is what they want.
And that's another thing, is that if you can give a girl an experience, a sexual experience she's never had before, bang, you've shot up to like the top of her like fuck it list or whatever.
Yes.
And there's so many different ways to do that. You can do it with hypnosis.
You can do it with hypnosis.
You can do it with... The bar is not as high as you might think, guys. It's really not. It's like a lot of girls have never been tied up before. And if you could just know one knot, that's all. Like,
that's it.
Then she's wet in her panties because they're like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And you might not even really know what the fuck you're doing.
Nope.
But just the fact that you're trying it goes a long way.
there's YouTube, for God's sakes. It's not hard to learn this
Yeah,
stuff.
there's YouTube.
There is actually like tutorials on bondage on YouTube. You can find this stuff all over the place. It's not hard to learn.
Yep.
And you don't have to be good at it to give her a good experience.
Bingo. That's it. I'm glad you said that, because I think a lot of dudes will probably have this sort of self-consciousness around it, like, oh, I'm not an expert, I'm not a professional dom, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, with the sort of more extreme stuff, like impact play, like knife play, whatever,
else,
electrical play,
Choking girls,
be
all
like
that kind of
have
stuff,
or suspension, like
Suspension,
know
definitely.
what the fuck you're doing.
Yes.
With the more extreme stuff, but with the basic stuff that pretty much any guy can do,
Right.
experiment, play around, and there's technique. Don't get me wrong,
Yep.
there's technique to it, but like the average guy can be a lot more dominant than he thinks.
And women want them to be more dominant.
Women are
They're
craving it.
begging for this stuff.
Yep.
They're begging for this stuff, which is why guys like, you and I and Paul and the guys in the space that are playing around that space
Yeah.
and with those tools, like, we don't have problems with women
Yeah.
because we bring something that 90% of guys don't.
Yeah.
And any guy can learn how to do this.
And that's
You
the
may
beautiful
have-
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you may have to get yourself out of the way. There may be some things you have to unlearn. You've got to try some stuff, right? You're going to have to experiment and figure out what your particular style is, what things really speak to you,
Yep.
right? Because it has to be congruent with who you are and how you are. Right?
Yes.
The things that work for me aren't going to necessarily work for everybody, but
No.
like, I'm not a rope guy. I just ain't.
Yeah. And you find your style.
Exactly.
You find finding what you like is just as important.
Exactly.
Because you're the one leading her through the experience. So you want to enjoy your goddamn self.
Yes.
And she needs to know that you're enjoying it. You're not just doing it for her.
Exactly.
It's a team thing.
You don't want to be a carnival ride.
No, you're not a dancing monkey.
No, you're not a dancing monkey.
You're not a dancing
Exactly.
monkey, right? So
Exactly.
there's a mutual benefit going on here. It's a
Yes.
win-win situation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's finish with one last thing. So, do you ever come across guys who need to kind of like unfuck themselves? Oh, hang on a second. I think Affy might be calling me.
All right.
Let me just double check that Affy Kingdom isn't trying to get in the building. I'm just going to say apartment 306. Oh, shit. Cut that out. I don't even know if he's here. I'm just going to say ask reception to let you up. No, this isn't live. I'm just saying I'm pre-recording it. Thomas, cut that bit out. Especially cut that bit out where I tell people what my apartment number is.
No, leave that in. Everybody loves stalkers. It's a perfect thing.
Yeah, dear God. So, actually, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to like stand up and make sure that he sees this fucking section of the video,
Yep.
because otherwise he might roll through it. So,
So,
the last thing I wanted to touch on is, do you ever have guys kind of come to you and say, to sort of unfuck hypnotically, the idea that they can't be that guy, the idea that they can't be that dominant guy.
Oh, yes.
In the bed, they're like too shy, too timid. They don't feel like that's them.
yes, definitely. I've had guys come to me who they generally talk about it in terms of not being able to like be masculine,
Yeah. Okay.
not being able to be dominant, right? And it's not just in the bedroom; it tends to be throughout their lives,
Yep.
right? But once you realize that that's something that's just a part of you, and usually that's that hiding mechanism, right? Like, I can't be masculine and dominant because if I do, the environment I'm in says I'm going to bed too, right? How do you project power in the bedroom if you don't have power,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So once you get that out of the way, and once you get them to realize that things have changed, they've got different options. That survival itself is power in a situation like that. Just being able to endure that kind of thing and still keep going is a win.
Yep.
Once you show them that and show them that they do have power, then it becomes okay, right? And then you show, oh, by the way, that kind of thing is what women crave. And oh, by the way, they want your leadership and they want your dominance. So it's not you're doing this to them, you're giving this to them.
It's a gift. It's a gift.
It is a gift.
It's a gift. And I think that helps. 1 second. Whoop. Hello. Yes, please let him up. Yes. Thank you. Got so many people coming in.
I know. You're a busy man.
I think that's like really, really important to be able to like let guys understand that that's what women want from you. And once they get that little bit of, they only need one reference. one reference experience of a woman responding positively to them being more masculine in the bedroom, more leading, more dominant in the bedroom.
Yes.
And then the light bulb goes off in their head like, oh shit, yes. Okay, great. Like they want this. I'm going to do more of it.
And what's better is there are some women who are good enough to lead a guy through that. Right? You get a good submissive. A good submissive will help their dominant become more dominant.
Interesting.
They will help create that polarity.
Yep.
Right? Because the more feminine they are,